try that. Which button is it? Okay. Okay, so we're gonna start, and today the topic is location-based OSINT. Originally, Pete put GeoGuessr in there, but I removed it, and you'll see why. Announcements. Sure's in the process of being ordered. I don't know how it's doing, but I wish they come back soon. This is the meeting flag. Oh, meeting challenges. You probably have to put them up. So I've already set the. You already set the categories up. Just like pull up everything that says location-based OSINT. I'm sorry about that.
I got it.
Yeah. And the relevant XKCD. We're in the west, but the west to our west is the east, and to our east is the west. So there's that. Geography is weird. Anyway, you guys can just like fill that in later. And also, probably some of you already recognize what format this is. If you don't, I'll cover it. Table of content, a lot of content. So first of all, disclaimer, GeoGuessr, stuff like that. And I will talk about some of the factors, and then method and MISC. Of course, for every OSINT meeting, I have to put up the disclaimer being like, don't be a creep, don't stalk people, especially illegally, like that's not good. And I just grabbed these slides from a previous OSINT meeting, so you can check that out. Just like be good people, that's it. Okay, so GeoGuessr sorry?
Can you go back to the meeting flag?
Can I what?
Go back to the meeting flag.
Which one?
Meeting flag.
Oh. It's up, right?
All right. Okay. All right. Sorry.
Okay, cool. Okay, so GeoGuessr versus CTF OSINT. Now, of course, talking about GeoGuessr, I have to talk about this person. That like this guy can find pretty much anything out of anywhere. And can I play the? I'll play the other one.
Guessing where I am on Google Maps in 0.1 seconds, but only using the grass with half the image and it's pixelated. That's North Norway. Nice. South Korea. Nice. UK. Chile. And just Iceland. That's rough. Yeah, that's definitely Russian.
So bad.
That's rough.
Guessing where
Okay. So, of course, he is a GeoGuessr god and pretty much OSINT god as well. But like, I'm gonna play a segment of this video to show you what strategy he is
I
doing.
gathered 40 gig
for a lot of these
like
things.
staying the distance on the side of the road and it just feels super sandy. You're gonna be very north up here near Sir Dukes. Could be pretty far west, but the sand only car here. But you have a sunset. This is what we call sunset coverage, where Google took the coverage during sunset. You have to be in Dalmanzadin, which is a southern Mongolian city right here. That is the only city in.
So like you can see these kind of things are pretty niche. Like based on the coverage of Google Street View camera to tell where you are is not a viable strategy in any kind in CTF OSINT, because typically people just like maybe snap a photo themselves and wouldn't use Google Street View. So there's kind of that problem. So So this is kind of my take on this. GeoGuessr is a game that gives people random locations completely based on Google Street View. So all of those details, like the coverage, like what kind of fence, what kind of telephone poles, would matter a lot in this context and would help people identify where that is. But in CTF style OSINT, typically we're given one specific target, and we have to extract information from that image to find out what is happening. And it's typically a precise location as well. You can't just say, oh, this is in the States and call it a day. It doesn't work like that. So this meta strategy obviously cannot work. So so today I'll be focusing on how do you extract these meaningful details to help you identify the location, as well as some general rules in this category, so that people are not like completely geography blind. So this meeting would be cover most of the information that you can extract from a given image and some rough matching skills, and the rest is just like you have to enumerate all the possibilities to find where that is. And I'll cover certain tools and tricks that helps you to find it. This is kind of an info dump. Although I thinned the deck a little bit, it's still 50 slides long, so bear with me. I hope you don't get bored. Sorry. So we'll first cover the geography part of this question. That's basically like, if you're given an image that's kind of like in the wild, like how do you extract some of the information from it? So the first thing I want to talk about is the sun direction. Of course, we all know the sun's rotation and revolution. The sun always rises in the east and sets in the west, and it can be found directly overhead in noon. That's just what we talked about in primary school. But based on that, we can also see that due to Earth's rotation, the sun is pointing between the line of tropical and Cancer. I think that's the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, or something like that. Yeah. So the sun is pointing between the north side and the south side, depending on the season. Now, of course, we are north of that line. So the sun will always be on the south side in our perception. So as you can see, if the sun is in the north, you're in the southern hemisphere. If the sun is in the south, you're in the northern hemisphere, because the sun is pointing around the tropics. That's why that happens. So, of course, it doesn't apply very much to equatorial countries. It can be all over the place due to the seasons, and it depends on weather or season. Like if you have a massive cloud covering the exact location of the sun, you can't really see what direction it is in. And you can probably fix that by looking at other reference points, especially the shadows. The shadows is a good strategy in GeoGuessr in this context, because the shadow is directly opposite to where the sun would be, and then that will be accurate enough for you to identify the compass location. Then, of course, other solar panels, people would point them at the sun, and other flowers, for example. But generally, these are the reference. You can't get too much out of it. So like, this is the obvious example. You can see that is Illini Union. This is from the south side, the bus station, and we can see the sun directly over there. So it's directly south, so that's probably around noon-ish, although it's a little bit to the west, so it's probably like 1 p.m., 2 p.m. This is from Google Street View. And then this is to the south, so we're in the northern hemisphere. Now, of course, when I was doing my research, I also found this kind of like what the fuck example. So the sun's position is really vague to be started, and also this compass, it's pointing to the south side-ish, but like it's really directly to the west, like southwest-ish. But we're in Australia. The screenshot is not clear enough, but we're in Australia, so it should be in the north. So use that as a reference. It's not 100% accurate, especially with clouds and all that. This is probably some camera shenanigans as well.
So you're saying that the sun's facing the wrong way?
It's probably some sort of glare, to my best guess, is what's causing this image to have this weird perception of the sun. Maybe the real sun is hidden well, shouldn't say hidden, but like maybe there's a cloud covering the sun to the north, and then when the Google Street View car drives by, there's some glare on the south side. So that's what's causing this illusion of the sun being to the south instead of to the north. But of course, like if you can clearly see, okay, there's a bright spot, that's the sun, that's gonna be accurate. And yeah, that's about sun direction. So this is just some basic geography. We have terrain and vegetation. This is a biomap. This is the elevation map, and this is a satellite map. So just give you a general idea of basically how the world looks like, so that, you know, if you like, does anyone have a rough idea of where this would be? Like, just give me a general location of where that would be in the US. I also found this completely randomly on Street View. Take a wild guess. Like, what region matches your stereotype of this?
The West and like Midwest. That's right.
Pretty good. It's like north of Arizona. This is shrubland. Basically like you can see no vegetation and it's all like feeling very desert, feeling very like there's nobody lives here. So this is the arid climate of the Rocky Mountains, which is not surprising. And yeah, this is a random highway in Wyoming. So like that's why they have not a lot of people in Wyoming, because who the fuck lives there? Yeah. So as you can see, you can probably take a wild guess if you're given such a terrain example to see, okay, this is probably, you know, somewhere based on maybe the satellite map, you can see that this part is generally more yellowish to guess what's happening. Human factors. So of course, talking about typically in these OSINT style CTFs, you are given an image, typically in a more urban settings, it would not just be like, here's a random farmland, take a wild guess. That doesn't really happen. So we're gonna get a lot of, for example, buildings, for example, like just generally, the first thing I want to talk about is languages, because you see them everywhere. Anywhere that has human existence has languages, I suppose. And this is roughly the alphabet map. This is not really the language map. Because a lot of the times, although you don't speak the language, you could comfortably type them in or use Google to find out what the heck is happening. So here's kind of like, how do you actually type them in? So as you can see, the green part of the world uses Latin alphabet. That's kind of like all of us kind of know how to type them in. And oh, sorry. But the rest I might need to explain a bit more. So there are two methods that I want to talk about how do you identify these languages. So the automatic method would just be like shove the image into Google and let it do the thing for you. I found that Google reverse image search also automatically detects languages and allows you to highlight it. Google Translate, of course, no questions asked, it's the OG. Auto detect language and translate it for you, so you don't have to worry about too much. But sometimes when you're given a blurry image, it kind of falls off. And that's sometimes people's intent as well to make it non-obvious. So the manual method is after identifying the alphabet, you can Google what language or what alphabet keyboard so that it gives you a website to just type these special characters in. And if you match it one by one, you're gonna get the string and then you can extract what's written on there. So like colorful text on the billboard may not be directly picked up by Google. So the Latin-based script, I don't need to explain it too much. You guys can just type it in. We're all familiar with English. You know, we can just type it. We can just look up the special characters being like, you know, C with a tail for that, or like O is 2 dots, U is 2 dots for other like Germanic languages and whatnot. It's like offline. Also Greek alphabet. It's pretty obvious. Greek, as we learned enough physics and math to figure out this is the Greek alphabet. And Greek is really only spoken in Greece and Cyprus and adjacent areas in Cyprus. So that's a pretty good starting point, I'd say, because it narrows down to like what, 2-3 countries. Yeah, and Cyrillic alphabet, kind of easy for English speakers to recognize because it's derived from Greek. But of course, you know, it has a lot of letter variations. So for example, in this case, you can see that some of the letters are recognizable, but some of them, like this reverse R and this is actually an L. This is an I sound rather than an N sound. So there's that, but of course you can still type them in if you find like something like Cyrillic alphabet or Cyrillic keyboard and then manually type them. Google is also pretty good at it because it's still alphabet based. It still has actually an alphabet. Yeah, so Asian languages, as you can see from the map, Asian is colorful. And it is really the hill that Americans die on, although America is diverse, so you can probably find these languages here. But yeah, so again, just as a general rule, if you don't know something, Wikipedia or Google is the good guide. So originally split these up into 5 categories, but more will be in appendix because I have to shorten them. So this is kind of like what you get in the Middle East, a lot of Arabic and a lot of Hebrew. So Arabic is kind of like this. I don't want to say squiggly lines, but like, so you can see it has a lot of these dots, and it generally flows in like horizontally. And because it writes from the right to the left, so you can see obviously, you can find it really obvious, for example, in this paragraph, that is entirely right aligned instead of left aligned. So that could be a telltale sign if you, for example, get a block of text and it's right aligned, and you're like, oh, that's Arabic. Hebrew is also right aligned, but it tends to be a lot more blocky like this. So that's kind of how Hebrew works. Of course, these are still based on alphabet. They're just harder to identify and type in and isolate the letters, especially in the case of Arabic. It tends to be harder to isolate these that. So South Asia, specifically like around India, I would say. So Indo-Aryan family of language. I use Hindi as an example because it's widely spoken. So it's mainly like the non-South Asia part, non-South India part. So it's like kind of the central, maybe a bit northern, maybe I think Western a bit as well. So you can see it has a horizontal line in most of the characters, especially in around the top position. So that's in most of the Indo-Aryan languages, they all have that. And they use a vertical bar as periods. So for example, in this case, that's a period. And I'm pretty sure somewhere around there also has a period. So that's kind of a telltale sign. If you see something with a lot of horizontal bars and vertical bar, like isolated vertical bars, that's that. And Dravidian languages, so that's exclusively basically South India, have a lot of circles in the characters. So yeah, there's that. That is the kind of the alphabet, and as you can see that they really include a lot of circles and curvy characters. Does anyone know why they have these curvy characters? Take a wild guess how these languages evolved. Okay, so actually it's because that these languages originally came from, so that when they were originally writing, they have to find something to write on, of course. And the only thing that they found fit is palm leaves. And when you're trying to write on the leaves, instead of carving on the stone, you tend to have straight lines because that's easier to just like carve and you're done. But then writing on leaves, if you try to do that, oops, the leaf breaks. You have to start over again. And what prevents a leaf from breaking is you make curvy lines in a small area so that leaf is less likely to break, and that's why they developed this writing system. That's true for a lot of Asian languages, especially also Southeast Asia, which I have to omit in this case because just check out the appendix. Yeah, so East Asia, I hate to describe it like this, but Korean is really like Lego bricks because the writing system that they invented is like you basically have these small components and they make up to an individual character. And the pronunciation is exactly like the characters. And so it has a lot of right angles and it's basically painless to type. even if you don't speak the language, you have this language, you're like, find a Korean keyboard, find these individual components and assemble them right to left and left to right and top to down. So according to their pronunciation. So for example, this component has H sound, this component is A sound, this is N sound, so this is Han. And this is GEUL, so this is cool, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so this is how this is Korean in Korean, and yeah, so like this is a very easy way to just type them out and find out what they actually are. And Japanese is kind of like it uses a mix of all of these writing systems due to its rather complex history. So you can see it is a mix of complicated characters, the Chinese characters, mixed with simple curvy characters, the simplified Chinese characters. Yeah, so these ones are the simplified ones. They typically only have like 1 or 2 strokes, so that's that. And then you see that these are this is actually from the Japanese Constitution, I'm pretty sure, but like these are some of the, I mean, so the history, so the history made that Chinese and Japanese, these two languages have loan words in each other's language. So I can't really say where these words come from, but like these are valid Japanese and Chinese words. So, you know, you can kind of tell from this writing. Now, of course, you might ask me, look, you're Chinese, where is Chinese language description? And to that question, I would like to say, I don't really know how to describe it. It's complex, it's blocky, it's just like this, but like, I don't know what's a good way to describe and type it out because I know the language, but you guys don't. So, just like Google it. I don't know. Look, because a lot of these ones are like simpler, but this character I know it's split from the half. This is the left half. That's right half. Like this is the same, but some of them, like for example, this one has a top to bottom structure, and if you don't know language, you don't know the structure. And this one has a like this one writes from the outside to the inside. Like, look, I don't know. Just like use Google. Google is good. Or just hire some cheap Chinese labor if you want to. Anyway, there's that. So let's move on from transportations. A lot of the times you'll get an image that contains, for example, cars, trains, just generally how how the road looks. And since the roads are everywhere, this is also really relevant. So side of the road is an extremely important example and can exclude basically half the world by this information alone. As you can see, Australia, Southern Africa, and India and UK and Japan, and this is Indonesia, I believe. New Zealand probably as well. Yeah, so they're driving from the left side of the road. So for example, if you see somewhere that's like, this looks Europe-ish, kind of feels like, so this architecture, this stone wall-ish, and then you're like, oh, they drive on the left, that's the UK. So that's probably very important. And also, for example, if you find somewhere that feels a bit more desert feel, it has a bit more desert feel. And in this image, the only kind of left driving desert region is probably in the middle of Australia. Now, I don't have an exclusive list. I don't know, but like, that's kind of how you based on it using the vibe. And yeah, so there's that. Also, I forgot one country that's actually kind of crucial, but like, just like, so also Thailand also drives on the left side of the road. So this is actually, I have to give the answer away. It's from Thailand. Because not only they drive on the left, you can see the car is actually parked on the left. And also this language is actually in one of the excluded slide, that is Thai. So you can see they also follow the more squiggly line, circular shape-ish, but it's more uniform in a sense that each letter has roughly the same size. So that's actually a shared taxi in Thailand. And talking about that, these shared taxis and these are rather common in Asia. So if you see something that doesn't really look like a proper car, if that's converted of some kind, it's probably somewhere in Asia. Because Americans, they only drive pickups. That's why. Yeah. So of course, now we're in 2024, you can practically get any brand of car from anywhere. Like if you think about all those big automotive companies, and like you can pretty much buy Tesla everywhere. It's probably not indicative if you see, oh, this is an American car, where in America it doesn't work like that. Now there are some exceptions to this rule. Of course, if you think about EVs is a rather new thing, so they're really only deployed in more of the developed countries. So for example, in Northern Europe, in the Scandinavia countries, you find a lot of EVs because government subsidies, and they're a lot cheaper to drive. And of course, in the US, here you don't see a lot of EVs, but like for example, in the Bay Area, in San Francisco and all that, so you see a lot of EVs. And countries favor their own car brands a lot. Like you see a lot of Ford here, but like Ford is also international, so that doesn't really count. But if you go to UK, you see a lot of Land Rovers and Vauxhall kind of as well. France, Citroen, Peugeot, and South Korea, like Kia, Hyundai is more international, but like these brands are kind of like the local brand. So typically, if you see a brand that you don't recognize, you can just Google reverse image search, and that brand is going to be indicative of where they're from. Like, that's a pretty good telltale sign. Because actually, I remember last time I went to South Korea, there are a lot of these cars, but they don't have a huge international market. So if you see these cars, you're like, oh, we're in South Korea. And car plates. Typically, a country or a region have a unified style plates, typically. There are many websites covering them. You can just simply Google them and find out. And license plate typically includes a language, so it's pretty identifiable. So Europe, of course, EU is a big thing. So you can see that they are typically in this longer format, at least longer than the US plates. And this letter code indicates what country of the car it's registered in. So the color is not really identifiable, but if it has a blue strip, or if some of them will actually have badge in the middle, you see those, okay, those are European plates. And this is a Russian style plate. Some Eastern European countries also use this style plates. So this is sort of the East Asia style plates. Some of the South Asia countries use this as well, but it's just very bland. It's just a plain white plate with numbers in Latin alphabet on it. But Japanese ones are a little bit special because it actually contains like where it is registered, and so there is that. You can actually extract more information from that. And this is a Columbia plate. It's the only yellow plate in South America. So if you see a yellow plate, it's probably gonna be Columbia. That's the one special one in South America. So as you can see, a lot of countries, they typically use white plates to so it's easier to identify high contrast, because a plate is supposed to do that. Now I'm gonna talk about what a plate is not supposed to do. Oh. A plate is not supposed to look like that. This is all the style plates you can get in Illinois currently, excluding the older plates. A lot of these have an older style as well that are currently in use. Canada has this sort of shit as well as Mexico. Like, look, I can't give you advice on this. Just like the only thing that's uniform in this is its size. Anything else, I can't draw any conclusions, because this is state dependent as well. Each state have their own this much set of plates. Look, there are 20 there are 20 college plates alone in Illinois. Like, look, America be like. And yes, so typically this is actually from my phone album, but typically you can actually like get whatever is no. I specifically picked a car that's not from my region. Because it actually has a car like right next to it that I cropped out. because it's a local plate, and this one is not a local plate. That's why. Yeah, so you can find stuff on world license plate, whatever, and then all the Chinese plates typically have this character means the province. It's a one character abbreviation of the province. This letter is the city that they're in. So that, and then the rest is basically the car identifier. But actually, there is a trick in this that these plates are typically released in batches. So if you can find the exact batch that it's released on, you can probably find the time that it's registered in. But that's kind of niche, and why would you need to do that? But like that's actually a thing. So people would actually time it. So they would buy their car at the good time to time a plate that has a good plate, because it's a lottery of 20 plates that you can choose from. But yeah, there's that. And also we'll move on to subways. So subways, they have there are two types, light rail and heavy rail. Light rail is typically in the form of a streetcar, for example, like this. Also like the Toronto streetcar, stuff like that. It's taller, narrower, shorter in the total length, and runs slower on the surface. So it typically is tracks along the road that may or may not be shared with cars and are also subjected to traffic lights. Heavy rail is in the form of like normal in the form of metro or trains, wider, longer, faster. This is what's it called? MTA in New York City. So, and it's typically underground. So that's a typical example of heavy rail. So this is actually the light rail in Hong Kong. So identifying subway. So subways usually have direct information like line number, line color, company marking, station name. Like this one, you have the American flag and you have the MTA logo right here. So if you get a clear enough image, you can be like, oh, this is MTA. We can also try to figure out its manufacturer and then location, since there are only so many manufacturers and typically tends to be well documented. Like Chicagoans like to take the L. Also this one is kind of like this is a railway company's logo. I don't know if you can find it, but like this is just kind of like a extra practice, I guess, included in the slide. Can you identify which subway system this is? This is in the US. I'll say that much. Can anyone take a wild guess? Well, like at least say something that's relevant to it.
New York.
It's really old, I'll give you that. But this is not New York. New York, they have as I said, New York MTA system is a heavy rail system. Does this look like a heavy rail system?
Oh, I did.
What? No, not really.
Is the L a light rail?
No,
Well,
definitely
it's
not.
So that
It's like a streetcar. Oh, no, that's heavy rail, right? Like, 'cause you can see the tracks in the corner.
but like look at how narrow it is.
Oh,
And actually, you brought up a good point that I will reveal the answer right now. It's a green line in Boston. The reason you brought it up is so important is because it used to be a light rail. It used to be a streetcar, but they converted to a heavy rail. So the track gauge is narrower. They still have to run on the same track using the same streetcar, but they converted to a subway system. And that's why it's and you know, of course, it's being the oldest subway system in the US. It has its restrictions, but this is a very classic example of Boston rails, I guess. But yeah, the Green Line is kind of unique. And buses. There are two major North American bus companies, Hillock and New Flyer. Their buses are very similar. So if you see something that resembles the MTD bus with yellow-white display, you know you're in North America. So this is the Hillock bus. This is the New Flyer bus. Do you guys know which bus company our like MTD bus is from? Take a wild guess. Yes. So you can see the livery, the display, everything just looks exactly the same. That's the same in North America. And as you can see, I don't know if this is by regulation or not, but like this top display is in the same font and probably in the same kind of in the same size as well. So, and it only really has two colors, this white color or that yellow color. So there's that. Also, North American buses, I have to say, are really accessible. So you can typically find these bike racks in front of them. So there's also that. But of course, if we move on to other regions, you'll see a lot different buses. That tends to be less identifiable. For example, Europeans, this is an example of a Berlin bus, European bus. It tends to be more European-ish. I don't know how to describe it, but like maybe the window is a bit bigger. It doesn't have the middle split, and the livery is completely different. You typically don't find these type of yellow buses. And plate as well, plate is longer. Remember the same thing that I talked about car brand? This is a Solaris bus that is pretty much only run in Europe. So there's that. This is an example of Chinese bus, but of course we have like tens of like at least a handful of companies, automotive companies that are making buses. And each region uses their own unique bus with their own unique livery, with their own station names. Like, look, I can't say much about that, but just note that in different parts of the world, the bus looks different. And finally, we can move on to buildings, landmarks, and city vibes. I am not a civil engineer, so I can't really give you precise advice about, oh, this house is building this structure. It is exactly in that place. But I think we can all see that the population and the age of the city, the population density and the age of city are pretty evident from how the housings are built. For example, around the U of I, you would not find many tall buildings, if at all. There are mainly like student apartments that are very new. And so you can probably say, okay, this is a relatively small town with not a lot of population density and a lot of suburbs. But of course, in some of the larger cities, you would find maybe there are more suburb, maybe there are more like high-rise suburbs, whatever. And of course, city planning also makes a huge difference. LA is a city bigger than NYC population-wise, but due to the time of development and the urban planning restrictions and all that, yeah, that's completely different vibes. So there's also that. So LA is more like, has a huge chunk of suburb, while the NYC, especially Manhattan, is really concentrated. So this is actually, I would not like, just based on the amount of skyscrapers, you can only find this in one place of the US. I guess it's not really that obvious, but like you can only find this in one place of the US. You can't find it anywhere else. Yes, of course. Yeah, this is photo taken in a train bound to Manhattan, and like just bro, you can't find it anywhere else. Yeah, so here's kind of the case study, Japan versus Europe. And as you can see, I don't know why I switched that, but like, okay. So these both of these images are kind of in a region that has narrow roads and these kind of flat housing. So how do you tell which one is Europe and which one is Japan? First of all, of course, we can look at the vegetation. These kind of vegetation typically, especially tends to happen more in Japan than in Europe. And this, like these kind of vines and whatnot, I suppose, maybe look a bit more like Europe. And in a lot of these European cities, elevation change happens a lot. But in at least where they build housing, they don't have a lot of elevation in Japan. Much of the mountainous areas, they don't really have much people living in it. So there's that. But also notice the style of housing. Notice how they were built. So like each one of them maybe have this part of a small garden, this garage, and the windows on top is like kind of like that in a more irregular way. And they don't really have a balcony. And that's kind of important because notice that this style of balcony, especially like these rods and whatnot. So, and the age of the door, these are typically narrow doors. So this is kind of more of a thing in Europe. And you can see that they're really well lined up in a rectangular fashion. That just doesn't happen in Japan. Of course, you could probably also say, oh, the telephone poles. Actually, pavement is an important factor because it looks relatively new and the pavement is relatively well done. But of course, in a lot of European cities, it is way older, and it tends to be, have these stone walls, maybe stone roads, maybe that are more run down just due to its sheer age. There's also that. Now, you could also say, okay, European buildings have these orange roofs that Japanese buildings don't have. So overall, you can see there are a lot of these subtle vibe differences. You can tell which city or just general region that it's in. And if I just put these images side by side, you can see there are a lot of difference in how a city is built. Now let's move on to the final part, that is method and MISC. Of course, this is the general methodology that I would give for any OSINT CTF challenges. So first of all, of course, Google reverse image search, because if you get an exact match, like or a rough match, you can probably tell where it is, and also extract language. So extract information, search any meaningful words, any, like, for example, road markings, road signs, that's also a good one. And then you would find where the location is, or just the general area would be also very good. And then I would say enumeration, which is just like, now you have your suspected area, go in there using Google Street View, using Google Earth, or whatever to confirm whether it at least matches the vibe, I suppose, and then start your search from there. The coordinates, you can right click on Google Maps to get the coordinates and convert them to desired format. And remember to try surrounding coordinates to prevent the miss by one error, which I happen to experience one with CTF, and it's kind of frustrating. And the last resort is, of course, use your other details to gradually expand your search zone, or try to find more details until you find a new suspected region. What's 3 words? Meeting flag is ACM room, or what's 3 words? I don't know if you guys figured it out. So it's a proprietary geocode system designed to identify any location on the surface of Earth with a resolution about 3 meters. So it's a 3x3 square, and each 3x3 square is assigned a unique 3-word combo. Intended purpose is for emergency services, and God knows why, because I've looked at the Wikipedia page and they're losing millions of pounds every year. But yeah, often get abused by CTS because it's not their intended use, but they use it anyway. They're like, flag format should be in 3 words, and people get freaked out, being like, what do you mean by 3 words? It's this. And other than that, I really haven't seen a lot of other coordinate system other than the standard GCS, which is just like the standard something north, something north, something north south, or something west east. Like that's basically the standard. And we're done. Next meetings this Thursday will be social engineering with Emma Sagnick, and next Thursday will be multi-party computation with Sagnick, and that's about it. You can put up the meeting flag. Thank you.